Not every avoidant discard is an abrupt ending to the relationship. Sometimes the avoidant just slowly fades into oblivion. Not responding as often to your texts. Responses are getting shorter. It gets harder to pin them down to commit to time. And when they do commit to plans with you, they often cancel or change at last minute. Their messages and communication to you becomes more and more cold and more distant. They start to communicate with you as if you were just a casual friend or even a work acquaintance. The romance fizzles out. They're not intimate with you anymore. But every time you press for answers, they tell you everything's fine. They tell you that they just need some time and space to work things out, that you didn't do anything wrong, and that everything is fine. And yet they fade and fade and fade and fade away until one day you either end it, they end it, or they just go ghost on you. And there's never any closure. There is never any explanation as to why they slow faded away on you. But there's usually one of two things that triggers the slow fade in avoidant. When they have the slow fade triggered, it's because their fears have been triggered. Their fears of abandonment, engulfment, and rejection. Now, it all goes back to childhood when this person was likely emotionally neglected by their parents or caretakers, and their feelings were often routinely dismissed. They weren't able to freely express their emotions as a child, so they learned to bottle it up in the relationship. Well, emotional intimacy leads to abandonment. That's what the avoidant learned in childhood because their caretakers, their parents, emotionally abandoned them. So if they let you in, you're going to do that too. So often something signifies that the relationship is getting real, that it's getting closer, that this is a real relationship. It is no longer just a shared fantasy of the infatuation stage early in a relationship. This could be an event like ring shopping. It could be a comment that a friend or family member made about how wonderful of a couple you two are and that you should get married. Or you might even be married to this person and you got a positive pregnancy test. Or you're planning to have children. Something significant along these lines will trigger their fears because now it's a real relationship, and that is scary. That means they have to let you in behind the castle wall they built around their heart, which means that you'll figure out that they are not lovable and you will reject and abandon them. So they fade back out of fear. And the more you push for answers, the more they fade back because you wanting them to be engaged in the relationship, you wanting effort from them is pressure, and it causes them to fade back even more and more. The other reason why the slow fade can often happen is that the avoidant is resenting you. Their own wants and needs were not being met in the relationship. But they never told you because they don't express their feelings and they fear conflict because their feelings were rejected as a child. So they don't tell you. They put you in a position where you need to read their mind. And over time, since their needs and feelings were not being met, they turn this into resentment and now they are resenting you, but they're not telling you why. And they're just fading, 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 fading. Again, it all comes down to a person that does not know how to communicate, that chooses not to communicate, and chooses to run from problems rather than facing them. They choose to avoid processing difficult emotions rather than facing them. But it leaves you in the dust, wondering what it is that you possibly did wrong. How did this person who is the supposed love of your life just fade into oblivion on you? It is a very painful process, and you find yourself desperately trying to get this person back, doing romantic gestures, sending them loving texts, trying to be an open source of communication, trying to get this person to engage with you in any way that you desperately can. But every effort is stonewalled. You are gaslit, and they just disappear on you, and it really, really, really hurts. You didn't cause this. You did not cause their unhealed attachment wounds. You did not trigger their fears. As long as you were a kind person that showed them love and you were not abusive or toxic, you didn't cause this, so don't blame yourself. But this is a lesson in holding boundaries. When this person is disengaged from the relationship, when they are going ghost on you, when they're disappearing, they're fading out of sight, this could have been an opportunity to hold and enforce boundaries. Boundaries being what you will and will not tolerate, what you want and don't want, what you need and don't need. Because if you held and enforced healthy boundaries, this slow fade period would have come to an end much sooner, because you would have put your foot down and said, listen, I love you, I care about you, but this behavior is not in line with my wants and needs. And if you're not ready to be engaged in this relationship, okay, but it's just not working for me. And it would hurt. You might lose this person, but you're destined to lose this person anyway. And if you allow the slow fade to happen without you holding a boundary, you're going to lose yourself too. Because you're sending yourself the message that your feelings, your wants, your needs don't matter, and that you don't have your own back when things get difficult, which is a very negative message to send yourself. Holding boundaries is not fun, but it's so important for your own confidence, your own self-esteem, and your own sense of worth. Because when you hold a boundary, you're sending yourself the message that your feelings, your wants, your needs, they do matter, and they do. And you can rely on yourself to stand up for your own wants and needs even when it's difficult. So take this as a lesson as to why boundaries are so important. But don't blame yourself for this person's behavior. If you were nothing but a loving partner, you didn't cause this. You are not responsible for their unhealed attachment wounds. And the slow fade can be just as painful and agonizing as an abrupt discard, because you're still being thrown out like it didn't even matter, but you're being done so in a slow and grueling process. And it can be agonizing and more agonizing the longer it goes on. And understand this, if they slow faded on you, they were only thinking of themselves. They were only thinking of their own perceived wants, needs, feelings, fears in the moment. They weren't considering you, and they certainly weren't considering the impact that this would have on you. Because if they were considering you, they would have communicated with you in a much different way. This is not how somebody who is concerned about your feelings behaves, and it's not how an emotionally healthy person behaves. You didn't deserve it. Don't blame yourself, because healthy people do not slow fade into oblivion on people that they love and care about. They just don't do it. And even if the avoidant wanted to end the relationship, they could have done so in a much more mature